Now I'm very excited to welcome back one of the best horse cappers and chicken wing connoisseurs in America, in Mr. Marco D'Angelo from wagertalk.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Marco in Vegas. Marco, last time I had you on for the Derby, one of your horses happened to finish first right in the middle of our show. Do you by chance have another thing like that going on?
I actually do have a horse racing later today, so it won't be live during the broadcast. But if this one gets home today, it's in a tough field. I'll be doing cartwheels, and you know how hard it is for this body frame to do cartwheels.
It's not easy, my man, but you stay upright for us here. That was fun. It was good, and of course he won. So I had to give you a little flack for not giving us the pick, but it's just one of these days you will, I think. So we'll see how that goes. But man,
it's amazing, Kev. I get all these texts from everybody. Hey, when's your horse racing? When's your horse racing? And you know what, though? I get no text on the first of the month when the training bill comes. I don't hear from anybody.
No way. First of the month. That's when, yep, everything goes dark. But hey, man, we have a fun race coming up this weekend because it's the third leg of the Triple Crown in the Belmont Stakes. I believe it's the 155th running of the Belmont Stakes and the 50th anniversary from Secretariat. Marco, how about that?
That means I'm old because I remember watching that race, sitting with my dad in the living room, and wow, 50 years. It's we're getting old, buddy.
I know. I wasn't quite alive yet, but I wasn't far from being alive back then. So it was I am feeling it myself, man, especially with my kids. But it's a great race. It's my favorite race, Big Sandy, and I just like the uniqueness of it because it's so long, and it's like this is the real test of champions to me. I mean, everyone loves the Derby, and there's plenty of reasons to, but I've always been a fan of the Belmont. And no better person to have on but yourself, Marco. So thanks a ton for coming on to discuss this. But before we get into this, I gotta ask you a little NFL, man. I just did an AFC North preview, and I landed on a couple teams. But before I tell you what I did, I want to ask you who wins the division, or if you have any thoughts about the North.
Well, I think it's still Cincinnati's division to win. They're the most complete team. Need a little bit tighten up that defense and keep Joe Burrow upright with that offensive line, but they've got the most talent. The teams that can make the big jump, Cleveland. I know we say this every single year, but there's no excuses this year. They have their quarterback. They have him from the start of the season. So, even though we got in there at the end of the season last year, Deshaun Watson, let's be honest, it was a shit show. Okay. I mean, he got to play a little bit in preseason. Then he wasn't even allowed to be at the facility for how many weeks. They come in late in the season and try to do something. So I expect Cleveland, this is the season they have to make an improvement, or things are going to get pretty dicey there. The Baltimore Ravens, they signed their guy, but how can you really call Lamar Jackson your guy when he wasn't on the sidelines for the playoffs? I got a big problem with that, Kiev. I'm not questioning whether he could have played or not played. That's not the issue. The issue is, why weren't you on the sidelines to mentor your backup? That was my issue last year with the playoffs. And, if I'm a member of that team and I was in that locker room last year, that's a little bit hard for me to forget. So we got to see how they get past that. And then there's my Pittsburgh Steelers. There's a lot of talent on this team, but the big question mark is the quarterback. And I know Kenny Pickett showed a lot of signs at the end of the season last year with some of those comeback wins. My problem is I cannot understand what the message is you're sending when you re-sign both Trubisky and Mason Rudolph. What does that tell your starting quarterback that you signed both of those guys, in the offseason behind you? I know it's mixed messages. Are they not 100% sold on Kenny Pickett, that they kept both guys in camp? That's my problem. They're going to go as far as Kenny Pickett takes them this year. The weapons are there. They improved the defense with some additions, and they got a little bit of depth on the offensive line for a change. But I still think the Steelers are looking at the third or fourth in the division, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at it in a different way. And it's funny. It took me a while to come around on Lamar and what he did. I have an inkling that, the injury was prolonged in a way, and it was just a strange situation. And I guess rookie players don't understand it, but if other players that might have had contract disputes, maybe they do understand it more. I don't know. But I think the only thing that can fix that is him showing up early and just showing a pure 100% commitment, like OTAs, being completely engaged in this team, and maybe they forget about it. But the biggest thing is the Todd Monken thing, which is the big wild card for him being the offensive coordinator from Georgia, all the way on Baltimore here. He had some great interviews. He's saying he's going to try to find space. That's how he runs his offense, and it's been working in Georgia. I don't know if it translates to the NFL, but if there's a type of quarterback that is something that you can transition from college to the NFL, it probably is Lamar. So I did buy in a little bit more on the Ravens. I came in before my preview, kind of wanting to be down on them, but then I wasn't. But then I asked myself, Marco, who are the top two coaches in the AFC North? And I think you can answer that.
Yeah, definitely. It's Harbaugh and Tomlin. No question about that.
It's
not even close. It's not even close.
It's not even close. You saw Cincinnati. They should have lost that game to Harbaugh. That 14-point swing was ridiculous. They were outcoached that game, and they were outcoached against Kansas City, only giving Joe Mixon 11 touches for the whole game. Massively outcoached. I am not a Zach Taylor fan, and I think he's a liability. They did lose some secondary on this team, and I think there's a way I could attack this division now, similar to what I did with the Chiefs and the Chargers last year. I was against Denver and the Raiders. I had plus 175 on the Chiefs, plus 275 on the Chargers. I just kind of bundled those bets together, and I ended up, of course, hitting the Chiefs. It would have been nicer if the Chargers hit, but I'm going to do the same thing with the Ravens and the Steelers. Now, Steelers, I did get plus 650. It's down to plus 500 now to win the division. I did that for less, but the Baltimore right now at plus 240 to win the division is, I thought, a decent deal for all that they went through, and the fact that they do have the coach to beat Cincinnati. Maybe Cincinnati has one of those years. So I never feel bad when I bet on the two best coaches, Marco. So I'm kind of taking half the division and putting my bets on them. I'm hoping for something good happening by the end of the season. Maybe the Bengals only get the wild card.
I can't disagree with you. If if everybody kisses and makes up in Baltimore, Baltimore is the team to beat, in that division. We saw what, they almost did last year. In the year before, it was the same thing. They had injuries with Lamar, but you've got the two factors. One, do they kiss and make up? And two, does Lamar stay healthy for a full season? Those are two really big question marks. And then I got to ask you, how did you read the re-signing of Trubisky and adding a year to the contract?
He knows the offense. Where else are you going to go? He doesn't have anything past a read. Maybe he starts using his legs again, because that's the only year was good with the Bears is when he ran for 500. I don't know, but I think he just wants to be a backup. I think he's fine with it. He made his money. He's having kids now. I think he's kind of complacent now being a backup. And you know what? Hope for Kenny Pickett to stay healthy, but I can think of worse backups than Mitch Trubisky, who's tall, got a strong arm, and maybe it takes him a few years to mature. God knows that it took me a long time to mature myself when I look back at some of my old days, my man. But, I don't know. It's a great question. But at the same time, you look at any backup in this division. Look at what Cincinnati's got. Look at Huntley for the Ravens. There's no one behind Deshaun Watson. I don't think any of these guys have great backups. And the whole injury dice is definitely something that needs to roll. But that's why I'm happier to taking plus money on some of these situations rather than laying juice. So, we'll see. I'm hoping Kenny Pickett, but I really like the draft. I love the Steelers draft. Got a couple of Wisconsin guys. They got the Georgia offensive lineman, who was one of my top 3 offensive linemen pre NFL season here, pre-draft really. So I think Steelers made all the right moves, fixing some of the trenches. And you can't forget they have Najee Harris running the ball. He's a beast, and I feel pretty good about this division. I actually think this division in a whole, Marco, has a high floor and a high ceiling. You can see one of these teams getting to the Super Bowl. You can see one of the lowest team getting 8 wins. So I just think it's a really good division in general.
I will say top to bottom, it will be more competitive, and the Steelers are definitely a value with there shouldn't be that big of a separation to what I see with the 4 teams.
All right, great stuff. Well, let's move on to what we're here to talk about, the Belmont Stakes. And man, it's going to be, I think, a decent weekend in New York. Have you checked the weather yet?
Yeah, here's the thing. Weather-wise is good. Okay, it's supposed to be 76, beautiful temperature, partly, sunny. That's great. The issues, and hopefully by Saturday it clears out, but we saw what happened in New York yesterday, having to cancel games. Other racetracks canceled racing. You've got the smoke coming down from the Canadian wildfires, and it was an absolute mess yesterday on the eastern seaboard there. They canceled the Yankee game. They canceled Philadelphia game. It's a concern with the smoke, but by Saturday, everything should be fine. Mile and a half's a long way to go. You don't want to be, you're gasping for air at a mile and a half as it is. You don't want to have to be dealing with smoky air on top of that. But I think everything's going to be good. The problem is, you get your works and your jog, you go out and jog in the morning. They've had to do that in the last couple of days with, not the best of conditions. So they're all going to be on the same playing field. So shouldn't be an issue as far as an advantage for one or the other, but it is something that definitely was a concern yesterday of what we were going to be looking at for Saturday.
All right. Well, thank goodness. Get that smoke out of there. That really changes things, that stuff hangs around. So thanks for reminding us about that. I see that Forte and Tapit Trice are kind of like, once again, the 2 favorites coming into this, just like they were kind of coming into the Derby here. Are they the deserving favorites for the longer race? I'm going to ask you, I'm going to ask you that first, and then I have a follow-up.
Okay. Yes, they deserve to be the favorites. Now, obviously, the question mark on Forte, the horse has done nothing wrong. He's coming in here with a winning streak. The problem is we haven't seen him since the Florida Derby. That's a concern. He had to be scratched on Derby Day. Now, remember, he wasn't scratched by Todd Pletcher. He was scratched by the state vet. Pletcher felt he could have raced that day. All right. It was the track veterinarians that looked the horse over and made the decision. By scratching him for the Derby, with a state vet scratch, you're automatically not allowed to race for 14 days. Okay. So that cost him racing in the Preakness as well. Now the horse has been training right along, but I can tell you from owning horses and listening to my trainer and several trainers that I've had over the years, you can't get the horse the same kind of race speed tightness in training that you do in actual races. It's the same way you hear the saying in sports, it's the game speed. You can't, replicate game speed in a practice. So now we're asking a horse to do something that none of these horses have done before, go a mile and a half, something they may never do again, because it's one of the uniqueness of the Belmont being that distance. They don't generally race that. Can he get that distance with his training schedule being off and not actually having a race since the Florida Derby, which, if you remember the Florida Derby, you're talking back, going all the way back to March.
All right. No, that makes sense. And I was going to ask you about his foot. That was my follow-up question. It looks like it wasn't too bad. And I heard that he had some pretty good practice runs.
Workouts, yes, they were good. Right. Now, the only thing that, and again, and this is now the era that we live in with social media, when he was pulling up after his final workout the other day, the horse actually stumbled a step, and all the clockers got it on video. Okay, so that video made it around social media that, oh no, something's, he's still not right because he stumbled. Let me tell you, horses take awkward steps all the time because you just went a mile, you're pulling them up, you're trying to get them to slow down because you might be taking a left hand or right hand turn to go back to the barn. And sometimes they just take an awkward step. Relax, everybody. Okay. The horse is okay.
All right. All right. Well, that's what we're hoping for. But it is funny how social media does freak out in those situations. But I have a confession to make, Marco. I have a confession to make. I cheated. I cheated on buyers. I went and paid for the Brisnet speed rankings, my man. So sorry about that. I had to make a quick switch in my game. But they're not too different than what buyers is anyway. But I wanted to take a look at it from a different angle. It's basically kind of the same thing, and it shows all the pace, all the pace per post and everything. It shows all the previous races and past performances, like we always look at. So it's not too much different of a look here. But you look at some of these horses, and there's not many long shots. You got this Miracolo at 30-1. That might be your longest shot. Red Route 1 is 15-1. And the first horse, Tappet Shoes, looks like it's coming in at 20-1. Is there anything we should know about these horses? Are they all tosses, or is there something worth using here?
Well, the Miracolo horse, I think that translates, it's going to take a miracle. That horse has no shot at all. I don't know why the horse is in the race. He's an absolute pitch. The only thing I could say is if you do look at his last race line, they put the horse on the front end and they rolled him. If he goes those kind of fractions on Saturday, he's still not going to be anywhere on the ticket, but he could cause problems for the horse that wants a slow pace, and that's National Treasure. When we get to National Treasure and a couple of the Brad Cox horses, I'll tell you a little bit of conspiracy theory thoughts that could be in there. But if this horse does go to the lead, it's going to ensure that we don't get slow fractions like we saw in the Preakness.
Oh, that makes sense. Well, that's that little tell them what you're thinking a little bit later. So Miracolo, but what about the other two? Are those worth your ticket?
The Tappet horse, Tappet Shoes, not a total pitch horse, but he's up against it in this field. I don't think he's fast enough to go with this quality of horses. This is the toughest field that he has faced. I can tell you he is bred to go this distance. So is he a total pitch? No, but I don't see him better than maybe on the bottom end of a superfecta in the race. The other long shot in the race, which is Red Route 1 at 15-1. That is a horse that if you actually look at his Kentucky Derby race, the horse had a little bit of problems. Him and the jockey weren't seeing eye to eye of what they wanted to do. Joe Rosario wanted to pull the horse back, race him from off the pace, and the horse was fighting him the whole time. You could actually, if you watch closely at the replay, you could see the horse throwing his head as Joe Rosario was trying to hold the reins. That is never a good thing, because what you're doing is, we always talk about having gas left in the tank. You're using your gas up twice as fast, because the jockey's trying to do one thing, the horse is trying to do another. The two are fighting one another, and you use more energy up. So finally, Rosario gave into the horse and gave him his head and let him go. And he got, I thought, too close to the early pace and made his move, wide. And it just was a bad situation for Red Route 1. But he still finished fourth, in that Preakness in that race. So, give him credit for that. Again, like I said, with the one horse, Tappet Shoes, best scenario for him is running fourth on the superfecta, in my opinion.
Okay, well, let's get into who's going to set the pace in this race, who's going to take the lead, and feel free to go into your delicious conspiracy theory.
Well, it's National Treasure is the horse that's going to want the lead. The 4 wants the lead, like he did in the Preakness. And the reason he won the Preakness is nobody went with him. And that day we had a scratch, just like we had in the Kentucky Derby, had a couple scratches. But the scratch we had in the Preakness was the only other speed horse in the race. when that happened, it totally changed the complexion of the race. What that meant was Mr. Bob Baffert, and we know all the problems that Bob's had. This horse didn't race in the Kentucky Derby because of the problems Bob Baffert had. He had enough points to go to the Derby, but Bob wasn't allowed to go to the Derby. And this is one of the horses that he didn't change, the owners didn't pull and give to another trainer, or Bob, just kind of paper trainer shifted over to another trainer. But he was eligible to go to Pimlico, and, Bob showed up on Preakness Day and made a big splash, not once, but twice, once in a good way and once in a bad way. If you remember, unfortunately, that day, he had a heavy favorite in one of the earlier races, I should say. And the horse, took a bad step, went down, unfortunately had to be put down on the track that day. So he went from as low of lows as you could have early in the card to later in the card, winning the Preakness, so it was a strange day for Bob. And obviously everybody that likes or hates Bob got both sides of it to, to bang Twitter on Preakness Day. And he stole the Preakness. And what I mean by stealing it is because he walked them to the half. I mean, whenever you go to a half, and if the slow fractions as they did, it's going to take a super horse to go by him. And he was life and death to hold off Blazing Sevens, even getting his own way on the front end. Now, Blazing Sevens is not in this race, but there are 3 horses in this race that weren't in the Preakness. And if any one of those 3 were in the Preakness, they would have been the favorite in the Preakness. And those 3 horses, obviously, you've talked about 2 of them already, Forte and Tapit Trice. The other one is the 3rd place finisher in the Kentucky Derby, in Angel of Empire. So he's not going to get his way here. Does the 5 be one of the horses that go to the front? That's a possibility to give him some early speed to contend with. Or Brad Cox has 3 horses in here. Does he send one of them as the rabbit? Okay. But if you look at the 3 horses that Brad Cox has in here, I don't know that he really wants to send one of them as a sacrificial lamb, because I can make a case for all 3 horses that Brad Cox has in this field. So I don't know he wants to give one of them up to, for the benefit of one of the others. And, we will talk about them. And one of them is a live long shot that is my, I always like to give you a live long shot to use on your ticket. So let me just go there. And that's Hit Show.
Please. Okay, Hit Show. Here we go. And I'm excited to hear about it.
The reason being with the 7-horse Hit Show, if you look at just the line there that he finished, 5th in the Kentucky Derby, you say, okay, 5th. He lost, 4 lengths from the top of the stretch home. No big deal, blah, 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 and you're going to overlook him. But the thing is, because Hit Show had the rail in the Kentucky Derby, and we talk about it every year when we do your podcast, nobody wants the rail in the Kentucky Derby. And if you are at the rail, you've got to try to gun your horse out of there to try not to be caught in the avalanche, that tidal wave of horses that's coming from the outside. Usually it's 20 horses. It was 18 in the Derby because of the scratches. So he had to be used hard. And I think he got away a little bit closer than he wanted to be in the early part of that race. And as we said, the Derby was very fast fractions. I didn't think that would happen this year in the Derby after what happened last year. I thought they would come to their senses and, the jockeys would rate their horses a little better in the Derby, but they didn't. So he was caught in early fractions, and he was down at the rail with those early fractions. But whenever he made his move, he got to the outside and was making his move 4 wide. I don't know why he just didn't stay at the rail to save ground. So he gave up a ton of ground whenever he was making his move, a move that at the top of the lane put him 4th on the outside after traveling most of the turn 4 wide, only 2.5 lengths off that fast pace. Then yes, he flattened out. He had a license to be. He was used hard early. He made his move, I thought, a little bit prematurely, and he made it wide. Those are 3 negatives that you change any of those, that's going to put him closer to the finish line, and the horse is bred to go the distance. He's a candy ride out of a Tappet mare. Tappet's the key that you want to see somewhere in the breeding for the Belmont, whether it be from the sire or be from the mare. The dam, they've won 4 of the last 9 Belmonts, a Tappet sired horse. So he's got the breeding to be there. Don't overlook him at 10-1.
All right. Well, there you go. The long shot hit show. And I guess the question is, if someone did send a rabbit, there seems to be a lot of horses that can be the closer. It's not like let's just say Cox was going to do that. It doesn't mean that it's going to benefit hit show more than Forte, right? Does that make sense?
It doesn't. What it does do is it hurts the chances of National Treasure. The only way National Treasure wins this race, in my opinion, is if they absolutely walk the early fractions. And that has happened in the Belmont before, because everybody's worried about going the 1.5 miles. You don't want to make your move too soon. And everybody has it drilled in their head. Every trainer that's had a horse in the Belmont is going to remind his jockey not to go brain dead and realize that you're on a different track. The Belmont surface, one, is a tiring surface. It's called Big Sandy for a reason. Okay. Part of it has to do with the sand base, in the surface, but it's a surface that kind of tires you. That's why it's the test of champions. It's also, affectionately called where champions go to die. Okay. Because they can't get that distance. They tire. Remember the horse. We thought we had a Triple Crown winner turning for home. Remember Smarty Jones? The year Smarty Jones was in the Belmont, made the move too soon. A lot of jockeys go by landmarks instead of what you need to remember about the racetrack. And you start making that move heading into the last turn. You want to be moving. Well, if you're making that move heading into the last turn at Belmont, you're screwed, okay? Because you've got that big sweeping turn and you still got a very long stretch to deal with. You don't want to start that move till you're halfway through that turn, starting to come out of that turn. In too many jockeys, especially when you get guys that, maybe race on the West Coast and only, show up for the big races, at Belmont, you only race there, once or twice a year. You go brain dead. You're just, oh, this is where I make my move, and it's too soon. That's a concern. But if he gets slow fractions, he could steal the race. Do I think he will? No. I think, though, if they go modest fractions, he could probably stay on the ticket, 3rd or 4th. But I'm not looking for him in the 1st or 2nd spot.
All right. Well, speaking about finishing 3rd or 4th, who are we throwing off 4th? Let's just stick with the try here. Who are we throwing off our ticket that shouldn't show?
I've got, the way I look at this race, it's a 3-horse race. I could make a case for 5 horses to win this race if things go a certain way, but legitimately, I think it's a 3-horse race. In the 3-horse race is Forte, is Tappet Trace, and the 3rd horse that we really haven't talked about yet, Angel of Empire. If you go back to the Derby, okay, Mage won the Derby. The best horse in that Derby was Two Fields, the horse that finished 2nd, because Two Fields was involved close to those early fractions that we talked about, the suicide fractions. He was there early and he was there late, all the way right to the wire. Mage didn't get by him till deep stretch. So Two Fields, in my opinion, was the best horse in the Kentucky Derby. Mage won the race, but Mage won the race for one reason. He got the jump on Angel of Empire. Angel of Empire and Mage went for the same hole. They both were racing from behind. They both were going for the same hole at the same time. Mage got to the hole first. In that split second that Angel of Empire had to wait for Mage to get through the hole and for the hole to open again was the difference in the race, because Mage got to go through full momentum, where Angel of Empire then had to check his horse and lose momentum. And that split second and losing his momentum is the difference that cost Angel of Empire the Kentucky Derby. If Angel of Empire gets through the whole first, Kiev, I guarantee you Angel of Empire wins the Kentucky Derby, would have turned around and went and raced in the Preakness, and we might have been talking about the possibility of a Triple Crown winner. But because he didn't win the race, they decided, Brad Cox, okay, I've got another horse for the Preakness. Let's point this horse for the Belmont. He's perfectly suited for the distance. He'll be fresh. He'll be ready. He's my horse to beat.
All right, Angel of Empire it is. Obviously, you're still sticking with a long shot, your hit show to at least hit the board, is what I'm guessing. And we're throwing off the Miracle one, Miracolo. Tap It Shoes is probably off. You said fourth place, and I would guess Red Route 1 is off. But why didn't Two Phils show back up for this thing?
That's a good question, and I don't have the answer for that. I think what they're going to do with Two Phils is maybe they didn't want to go the mile and a half, and this. Let's face it, the mile and a half is not a fun distance to go. Yes, it's the prestige of winning a Triple Crown race. That's great for whenever you head to, what I want to do in my next lifetime, head to the breeding shed and be a very popular stallion, get paid lots of money to do so. Who wouldn't want that? You get to service 200 mares a year and you get paid to do it. Sounds like a good gig if you can get it. But, I think they're going to point to either the Travers or the Haskell. And I would put probably the Travers being the more prestigious race. And then that also sets you up timing wise perfectly for the Breeders, Cup in November.
Oh, that's going to be a great one in November then, man. I'm really excited to see Two Phils race again, but without giving up too much valued information, what's your strategy? How are you going to build your ticket?
My ticket's going to be constructed with, as I told you, the three horses that I think you've got to use. I'll have, Angel of Empire probably first and second on all of my tickets. And then I'll be looking at Forte and Tapit Trice being, my 2 and 3 horse. And then, like I said, on that third line, I'll sprinkle in, National Treasure, if he gets the slow fractions, can hold on. I'll sprinkle in the horse that I talked about, Hit Show. There's one other horse that we didn't mention at all, and I am going to throw on a couple tickets on the backside just as a price, and might end up being a little bit of a wise guy horse because people like this angle. One, I like the name, but they misspelled it. They typed typo. They left a couple letters out. But Archangelo, okay, is
D'Angelo.
This is a horse that's only got 4 career starts. He's improved his speed figures in all 4 races as he heads into this race. And the thing that makes it intriguing, the trainer Jenna Antonucci, last 30 days only had 11 starts, small stable, but she's won 36% of her races. Okay. So she's winning. The barn is winning. The other part is this is a horse that his first 3 starts were all at Gulfstream Park, but his 4th start, guess where that was at? That was in the Peter Pan Stakes at Belmont. That is the prep race, so to speak, for the Belmont. And as we talked about this surface so much, having a race over this track already, and there's not a professional sports bettor that doesn't talk about, how many points you given for home field or home court. Okay. You got to give this horse something for already running over this track, and that being his last race and winning. So I will sprinkle, a couple tickets having this one on the 3rd and 4th slot in a, trifecta and superfecta. And then, of course, like I said, how can you not root for Archangelo?
Archangelo, like D'Angelo. You gotta love that. Funny you said that, because I wrote Archangelo as a sleeper, and I was going to ask you if you didn't bring that up, because I thought, lightly raced it looks, like you said, speed figures keep going up and up. Peter Pan on the Belmont. it almost feels like it makes too much sense. And I wonder if that 8-1 sticks. I wonder which one it is. I've heard a lot of sharper people on a hit show like you, and then obviously Arcangelo sitting at 8-1. So I've just found those very intriguing horses. But man, yeah, I just feel like it's a pretty good field here in general.
I think it's a great betting race because there's not a lot of separation between the top 3 horses that I said. So you got to make a stand. You got to say, okay, who's going to be my key horse? And then you can still make money in this race because the betting's going to be split up. There's, the Forte camp. If it wasn't for him missing the Derby, Forte would be the odds-on favorite coming into this race. Right. But because of that question mark, there's going to be a lot of sharp handicappers like myself that don't want to commit to Forte and put all their eggs in one basket on him, because is he going to have enough to go the mile and a half? So what you're going to get, because it's a Triple Crown race, we talk about this all the time. Now, the one thing about this Triple Crown race is it will not have the handle that it would have had we been going for a Triple Crown. Unfortunately, when there's no Triple Crown on the line, for a lot of horse people that are just the casual fans that we talk about, that inflates all of our betting pools that we like during the Triple Crown, they don't show up for the Belmont with nothing on the line. So you're not going to get as big of a handle as you would have had, but you're still going to get a big handle. And that creates a lot of inflated payouts because there's just more combinations of tickets in play because of the number of people playing the race.
Right. And that's why the favorites aren't 1-1 in these situations. They close a little bit better just because of the total parimutuel money in there. Well, that's great. And where can our listeners get your information? It is exactly how you're going to play this race.
Well, I'll tell you what, the easiest thing to do is to head over to wagertalk.com. I actually have my package up. You can purchase it in advance for Saturday, but it's not just the Belmont. You can get my exact betting strategies. And as you know, I send it to you all the time. You just walk to the window and read it right off your phone. You can't make any mistakes on how to bet the race, because I'm telling you exactly how I am doing it. But you'll also get all of my sports plays on Saturday, whatever I'm playing for, baseball, basketball, hockey, you'll get all those plays. And guys, we're on a really nice run right now. Last 9 days, 12-4 with all of my plays. You'll get everything on Saturday. It's a $39 package, but since I love your viewers so much, Kiev, can I give them I can give them a discount code. They can get $10 off if they want.
Please do it, man.
Just use BEL10. When you check out, just put that in the coupon code BEL10, the number 1010, and you'll get $10, off the package. So you can have a fun-filled, action-packed Saturday, as we all love.
There is a ton going on this weekend, and that is awesome. What a great deal. BEL10. Remember that when going to Wager Talk and getting Marco's package. Marco, thank you so much for coming on the show. Have a wonderful weekend and best of luck in the race.
All right. Thanks.